Alrighty, so we're sitting down to do another one-shot review, and today I want to talk about the show Moving on Hulu, which is like a Korean action drama about a high school that is comprised of a bunch of kids with superpowers, and their parents have superpowers, and there's government conspiracy and all that kind of stuff. But the reason why I'm doing this in the one-shot review sort of format is that I have watched the entire series with my girlfriend Mary Elizabeth of 20 episodes, and I just have some thoughts on the whole thing. And it's there's not going to be any more episodes, so it's kind of I can talk about the entire thing all as one package. And this will be a pretty short video because, quite frankly, I really did enjoy this show, and I don't want to spoil anything like at all for anybody that's going to watch, because that's kind of the magic behind some of the plot elements in this show. But what this show is about is, I want to say our main character is this kid named Bong Seok, but honestly it follows kind of all of the kids in this high school in a certain way, at least all the ones that there's a main focus on. Like there's another one named Hui Su, and there's this kid whose name's escaping me who has like super strength, and another one who has some power that I don't know about because I either couldn't read the South Korean on his file or they just didn't say. But essentially, you start out with this kid that Bong Seok, that is being weighed down by a bunch of different heavy plates and backpacks and all these different weights by his mom. And what we find out is that the reason why is when his emotions become high, he floats, and he's supposed to have the ability to fly, but he hasn't really learned how to tap into that yet. So in reality, his whole life, he just gets excited, then he floats away, and then it's very scary because, depending on how he's floating, he could fall and hurt himself and stuff like that. There's another character that is another probably like focal point of this show, and that is Hui Su, who is like eventually becomes his friend and stuff like that, and she has powers as well, which is kind of a slight spoiler, but saying that everybody has powers, I kind of already gave that away. But I'm not going to say what it is because I think that's a big spoiler. But essentially, this show follows these kids meeting each other, going to school, but while these other things are happening in the background of government conspiracy, with initially there's some dude from America that's trying to execute retired superheroes, and then there's also, because I guess it's a South Korean show, their main enemy is the North. And so there's enemies from the North as well. And, like I said, I really can't get into the plot very much other than the fact that it is a show that is very good, and it follows these teenagers that have powers that are like seniors in high school, I think. And these different things that are happening to the side with, that dude from America that's coming to kill all these people, and the North finding out about the program and stuff like that. And then, what's the South Korean government's angle on all this? There's like this CIA type agency called the NIS that has somebody in charge of it that's sort of overseeing things as far as like monitoring people with superpowers and things like that. So if that kind of a show sounds interesting to you, I promise you that you'll like this show. And even if you're really tired of superhero related stuff, this show is honestly good because of the character drama and the relationships between characters and the way that the world around them influences their life and things like that, and less so about like, oh, this guy's got a crazy cool power and he saves the day, right? So I would say even if you're sick of the Marvelization of everything, this was honestly still be a good show for you to watch. And then obviously if you're into that kind of stuff, the Marvel stuff, then you'll especially like this show. So that being said, to talk about some of the reasons why I think you guys should watch this show and think the reasons why I like it before kind of talking about what I would rate it. Um, Essentially, like I said before, the show is mostly about these character notes and not really about the powers themselves, and that turns out to be kind of like the main selling point of the show to me. And as the story unfolds, you learn much more about each character and their backstory and the reasoning behind the way that they are in the present day. And also, there's other things, like one thing that's kind of a spoiler that I want to talk about is, everybody delves into this, at least a little bit of their ideology on the world around them, and just through a course of their actions and stuff like that. But there's one character who's obsessed with like action novels, and he says that they're actually kind of romantic, and that he loves that in all these novels, and he believes this is the way real life is as well, is that the rule is always true that the good guys always win in the end. And it may take a very long time, but the good guys always win in the end. So then he lives his life as a good guy, knowing that ultimately he will win in the end no matter what happens to him. And I, just as somebody that is kind of on that path right now, that just felt like such a based thing, and I really loved that character's sort of mindset on things. Let alone he's like the father of one of the main characters, and you kind of see his love for his child come throughout the show, and that's just very awesome too. And that's the other thing, is like through going through these character notes, like even though this show is about super people, most of the conflicts that they experience are stuff that we can relate to in our daily lives. So even just thinking about that same person, there's an episode where they accentuate the burden that it was that he was a part of this sort of secret agency where he would go on missions as a superhero and help the army to defeat the North and all that kind of stuff. But what it highlighted in that episode was less so that he was a secret agent, but more so that he was miserable at his life in a desk job for the government, and he needed a government job to be able to afford where they were living. And even though he was miserable at work at that desk job, and he felt like he was meant for more because of his powers, and that's just would be such a greater fit for him, it allowed him to come home every night. And even though they had very little money, they could afford to do their special barbecue night once a month. And you just see how much he enjoyed spending time with his wife, and like looking forward to seeing her every day. And even though he was miserable at work, he would come home and have the greatest time ever hanging out with his wife. And then he goes back to work, and now he's able to make money. They're able to put food on the table, even though he has to basically do all these PTSD-ridden activities and things like that. But then because he's going off on all these missions, he's rarely at home and doesn't get to spend very much time with his wife, and that's eating away at him in almost a similar manner. And then it's accentuated by the fact that they show a scene where, there's their freezer, and every time she goes out and buy the ingredients for barbecue night, he's never home on their special night, and the freezer is full of all this barbecue. And both of them are hurting by this, because he wants to be home because, we see how happy he is when he's able to do that, but he can't provide for the family or feel like he's fulfilling himself by doing so in that desk job. But then now he's able to check that other box, but then his personal life hurts for it. And it's like there's just such a parallel between stuff like that and even stuff that people experience in real life. Like myself, I used to have to travel a lot for work, and I hated it. Every time I would, at first it's kind of novel, but then after a while, it's like every Monday, I'm leaving my girlfriend and dog, whom I love very much, to go spend the whole week with, now the people I worked with were friendly and stuff like that, so I'm not going to say like spend the week with people I hate or something like that, but it's just like I don't get to spend that time that I would have otherwise been able to with the people that mean the most to me, and that weighs on you as well. So I use that story And that's not the only story that happens within this show, but just to highlight that, the real value from the show I got, honestly, was in the drama between different characters and the way they lived their life, and how the burden of being this type of person affected them. But it also, they carried much of the weight of being a very normal person along with them as well. So that's one of the aspects I like a lot. One other thing I like about the show a lot is that everything that happens in the show is like semi-realistic, and then the way that they did the CGI isn't really that cheesy. And honestly, I think that if they were able to do it for that TV show and they didn't spend a lot of money doing it, I think that everybody should take a look at that and maybe see, like, this is the way that you do this sort of superhero thing cheaply. But I don't know, maybe they spent a ton of Netflix or a ton of Hulu money to make that happen. I have no idea. But, there you go. And another thing I like about this show was it's based on a webtoon, which the only other content that I've also watched that was based on a webtoon was the anime Tower of God, and then the anime God of High School. And both of those were based on a Korean webtoon and got adapted as an anime, but this is a Korean webtoon that got adapted as a live action. So in that way, it was pretty cool. And there were aspects of the show that kind of had shonen-esque characteristics, like Bong Seok is seen eating a ton of food all the time, which just makes you think about, like, every shonen character just waits to save the day and then pile on tons of food. But seeing those elements throughout the show and them translate well to live action was kind of fun. Another thing that I liked about the show is that some of the characters were just such good people. Like, it helped to reinstate, even though it's all fictional, it helped to reinstate more of my faith in humanity a little bit, because just seeing somebody as nice as Bong Seok is, or seeing somebody as sweet as the dad of one of the characters, or how much the Bong Seok's mother cares about him, and how all these people are reacting to the things that are happening to them. It was just one of those things where even though the show is literally examining the negatives of this government influence and trying to use people as weapons and things like that, you also have that reflected against all these people that are so human at the bottom of their heart, and they do the right thing most of the time. So anyway, I really can't talk about it more because I think that if I were to talk more about some of the aspects that I like so much about the show, it would delve into some of the plot points that I don't want to reveal. But I'll just say that, this is a show about people with superpowers who are accidentally collected into one area, so we think, and it really shows off all these great character notes between the different characters, and the drama aspect of it isn't too campy or weird, and you genuinely care about these characters, and after you learn about their backstory, you can understand the motivations behind the way they act and things like that. And if you're really into a character-driven, human, superhuman story like that, then you'll absolutely enjoy this show. I watched it in sub. I recommend you do the same. Watching something like this in dub would be super weird, my opinion. So if I plug it into the system, if I take this, what I'll call a mini series, since the whole story is contained into one season, if I take the entire thing into account, I want to say, honestly, we were at the edge of our seat watching it the entire time, and we couldn't wait for the episodes to come out. So I'd have to give this a low 4. And, I thought it was really good. I recommend everybody that has Hulu go out and watch this. I thought it was a great show, and it put a great smile on my face. So I recommend moving to everybody, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.